Hey there, I'm Mike Dunn with Gaming Trend at Gen Con 2023, and I've got Kyle from Darrington Press, and he's going to show us the game he designed, the first deck building game from Darrington Press, the lovely Queen by Midnight.
Yes.
I almost managed to do it without something almost falling out.
Should have taken that out beforehand.
I did a reshoot, so I should have thought of that too.
Oh, good.
Anyway, Kyle, I've been dying to see this game ever since you guys announced it. Just the table presence of the clock, everything. Give us the skinny on it.
Absolutely. So basically, this game takes place in the world of Twelvefold, in this kingdom it's a matriarchy full of badass princesses, but they are all ruled by the Midnight Queen. And the inciting incident of this brawl is that the Midnight Queen has died, and her last will and testament was to invoke the rule by midnight, which summons all of the princesses to the Midnight Court, where they must do battle with one another. And at the stroke of midnight, the most powerful princess left standing will be the new queen. So yeah, that's the long and short of it. You play as one of the 6 princesses, and as an asymmetrical deck building game. Every single one of them has their own vibe, their own play style, their own different types of tactics, yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Awesome. Well, run us through some of the mechanics and how the gameplay is.
Absolutely. So as a deck building game, the name of the game is purchasing cards to build a deck and have that deck be a nice potent deck that's going to take down your opponents and get you enough health and clout to win the game. So at the end of the game, when the clock strikes midnight, you add up your health and your clout, and whoever has the highest number of that is the new queen, basically.
Awesome. The artwork on this just looks amazing.
The artwork was done by Amir Sheik, and there was also Mike Pape and Mikhail Ivan as well. That did some really incredible art. I'm in love with every single one of these princesses.
Fantastic.
So you're building your deck, purchasing cards from one of 2 locations. The first place that you can purchase cards from is your own princess's individual vaults. So as you can see, this is right here on the player boards. You basically have 3 cards up in your vault at a time. This is your vault deck. So when you buy a card, it goes in your archive and you replace it with one of these. These cards are unique to your princess and your princess's individual play style, essentially. And the other place that you can purchase cards is from the bazaar, which is at the foot of this gorgeous clock tower, which also functions as a lazy Susan. So you can move it around, and everybody, if you're playing, with people around a table, you don't have to go on the other side to figure out what's for sale at the bazaar. You can just turn it really nice and easy. Basically, each princess is 2 out of 3 specific classes. There's brawler, schemer, and caster. Okay, and each princess is 2 out of those 3. So Freya, for example, is a caster brawler. Okay. Boss No is a schemer caster. Hephaestus is a brawler caster. And so basically that means someone like Freya can only purchase caster cards or brawler cards. So looking at the bazaar, she could purchase Gift of Wonder or One Step Ahead, but she could not purchase Tea Party. All right.
Got it.
Each card has a to buy cost and a to play cost. In order to buy a card, you use this number. So like this one, for example, is 1 to buy. In order to play it from your hand, you would pay 2 clout. Right?
So cloud is your primary currency.
Cloud is your currency. Cloud is your main resource. And when you start the game, every princess has a starter deck. This is kind of where the game begins as symmetrical. So you start basically with a hand of 5 cards. And when you take a look at these cards, you'll see that there are basically a lot of clout generating cards. All right. And so when you generate clout, you kind of pop it up here and you're like, okay, I have 6 clout to spend. All right, what am I going to buy? And so you buy a card, it goes in your archive. And then when you run out of your deck, you basically shuffle your archive and that becomes your new deck, just like any other deck building game you may have played in the past.
Right. So like your starter deck, obviously there's a lot of clout, which is your purchasing ability. Is that the only kind of cards that are in there?
No, that's a great question. There are a bunch of really interesting cards in here. There's, first of all, there is a Quell card right here. This is a reaction card. So these cards are meant to be played face down in your armory. Yeah, absolutely.
Sorry.
These cards are meant to be played face down in your armory. And when conditions are right for them to be activated, you flip them and basically you get the effect. Now, some of these reaction cards cost clout to play. And if you are going to activate a reaction, you just have to make sure that you have the clout to spend when you activate it. You don't have to spend clout to put it down. But this card is basically just a really generic, like, oh, somebody's attacking me, I'm going to flip it, and this cancels the attack.
Okay. And so by placing it face down, it's almost like you're sandbagging it for a future
Exactly.
situation.
Yeah. And the other card in here that I want to point out is the strategize card. This is a utility card that lets you do one of three things. All right. It lets you banish one card from your archive, which is your discard pile. It lets you banish one card from your vault, which is here, or it lets you banish this card and gain one clout. All right. Now, obviously, the term banish means that the card is taken out of the game. It does not go back to your archive. It does not go anywhere else. It means it is gone and done. And that's really important for deck building games because, especially with your starter deck, if you take it and look through it, one of the most common cards in your starter deck are these coppers, which are literally just worth one clout. And they're great to begin with, but you want to get rid of them soon so that you pull cards that are more potent and ultimately worth more value.
Yeah, that's like the friction point in most deck builder games where, you're trying. It's a balance between cards that you're bringing into the deck and cards that you're pulling out.
Absolutely.
So that you can get to those good cards.
So you can keep drawing and doing the cool thing that you want to be doing.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent. Let's talk about some of these other cards here.
Yeah, absolutely. So there are a bunch of different types of cards, obviously.
Right.
There are attack cards, which are pretty understandable. You play them and then they immediately go in your archive. And then there are utility cards. Utility cards are very similar to attack cards in that you play them and they immediately go in your archive. But utility cards are just cards that give you abilities, they give you clout, but they're one and done. So you play them, they go away.
So is your archive basically your discard?
Discard, graveyard, whatever you want to call it. Yeah, but that's what it is.
Yeah.
And then you also have boons. Boons are essentially buffs that you give yourself. You put them face up in your armory and they stay there until a specific condition dismisses them or until another princess, for whatever reason, has the ability to dismiss it with their own powers. Like Boss Snow has the ability to get in your armory and do a whole bunch of shenanigans.
Got it.
There's also Banes. Banes are basically cards that you can put face up in another princess's armory that give them debuffs. And then there are also summons. Summons are things like NPCs that you can put face up in your armory, and then you put these loyalty tokens on them equal to the amount that they say that they start with. And if somebody attacks your summon, or if they have the Guardian feature and they can take damage for you, basically for every point of damage, they lose a loyalty counter. And when they lose all of them, they go to your archive.
Got it. That's like health.
Exactly.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
My brain is putting it into Star Realms.
100%. Yeah.
So if I bust out with that's like a base, for instance,
Sure.
forgive me.
Yeah, no worries. No worries at all.
That was the first real deck builder that I got into. So.
Sure. Other types of cards that I want to point out. We have these cards right here, which are your war chest cards. These are extremely powerful cards that are basically, they consist of 2 boons, which are 3 to buy and 0 to play, and your princess's ultimate ability. All right. And basically, when the clock on Queen by Midnight strikes 8 o'clock, these cards are suddenly purchasable. Okay, so these stay hidden away until 8 o'clock, and then you can purchase them. And once you purchase them, just like any other card, they go in your archive, and you can draw them and play them once they are in your hand. But it's noteworthy because each princess has an ultimate ability that they can just lay down. They're 6 to buy and 6 to play, and they're basically these really big, cool show-stopping moments that you can use to, hopefully kick people down in the late hours of the game.
Nice. Now, clearly, you've got a lot more than just deck building mechanics here.
Oh yeah.
I see dice, and I see obviously these chips, and
Sure.
And then I also have another question in that a lot of deck builders that I've played have been primarily 2-player, and clearly there are more than 2 players.
Oh yes. Oh
So,
yes.
lest I overload you with too many questions at once, maybe let's start there.
Let's start with one.
How do you facilitate more than 2 players in a deck building game like this? Like, how do you choose who to attack and
Sure.
and that sort of thing?
Well, it's fun because when the game begins, I would say the first 2 to 3 rounds, you're just doing what has been called clout chasing. Thanks to Abria Iyengar for that. She labeled it correctly. You are clout chasing for the first couple of rounds, basically. So the afternoon bazaar is the bazaar that you start with, okay?
Okay.
And what's cool about these cards is that they give you a lot of clout generation, but they're also like a little bit toothless. You know, you might have like a tea party or a heel stomp, or maybe you spread a nasty rumor, or maybe you have a warm up, you know, that sort of thing. And basically, when the clock strikes 5 o'clock, all of these cards, including the ones that haven't been drawn yet, get banished, and they get replaced by the Twilight Bazaar. The Twilight Bazaar is when stuff starts to get a little more heated. You start to get a cudgel. You want a cudgel? We have a cudgel. You want telepathic whispers? We can do telepathic whispers. That's when things get a little... Exactly. Things get a little spicy. Nice. And then at 8 o'clock, the same hour that your war chest unlocks, that's when we bring out the Midnight Bazaar. And that's when things start to get really crazy. Nice. That's when you can become a lich if you want to. Oh. Basically you go down to 1 health, but you can't die. It's that's where the crazy stuff starts to happen. Wow. So your question of like, when do people start attacking? You know, you should have 1 to 2 rounds where you're just basically building stuff and maybe playfully jabbing at people. But what I will advise is don't be too aggressive and don't be too indiscriminate with where you carry out your attacks, because, and this leads me to describing my favorite mechanic in the game, which is the inner circle mechanic. So basically at 6 o'clock, what happens is we all go around the room and we look at our cards. And so we take out these little tiny cards, right? And we're like, okay, which one am I going to pick? Because in the event that you drop to 0 HP, you flip and reveal which one of the princesses you have declared for. Okay, and if that...
Okay, so all the other players' portraits are in this deck.
Yes. And so once you go down to 0 HP, you flip the card, and if the princess you've selected does not already have an advisor, guess what? You now become their advisor. And when you are an advisor for a princess, you have 1 of 2 abilities that you can activate at the start of their turn. And you choose which ability you want. They don't get to tell you what to do. But each of these abilities basically lets you either buff your princess or do extra attacks or earn her extra clout. It just basically helps your leader, essentially. And nice. The whole idea behind that is that if your leader wins, you win as well. So if you are indiscriminate in who you attack and who you piss off, basically, watch out, because they may die and become somebody's advisor. You might strike them down and they may become more powerful than you can possibly imagine.
Excellent. Fantastic.
Yeah.
Now I see some dice here.
Sure.
Tell us about the dice. And clearly...
Oh, look. Ooh.
Oh my goodness. That is beautiful.
So there are some dice mechanics in the game. Freya, for example, has a lot of cards that have to deal with dice. And so she has these mechanics called lash tokens, where basically, here, let me actually pull out some of her cards that exemplify this. Badoop, and you got this. So one of her bread and butter cards is this card, 1,000 Cuts. Okay, and basically what it does is whenever Freya takes damage while she has 1,000 cuts in her armory, she gets a lash token. And whenever she spends a lash token, she can basically increase or decrease the value of 1 die roll that she's made. Okay, and so she has a lot of cards that deal with dice. So for example, her Chilling Glare, you roll 2 dice and deal that amount of caster damage to an opponent, and you lower one of their class levels by 1 until the next turn. There is also a fair amount of dice mechanics in Dr. Lux. if we go over here, you can see Dr. Lux has a really cool ability called Experiment. Why don't you read it?
It's a little. So roll 1 die and discard any number of cards from your hand. For each card discarded, you may change the result by +1 or -1. And it looks like there's a table that you get to roll on that with a lot of good, with a lot of fun stuff on it. So 1, shuffle your archive into your deck. 2, deal 3 schemer damage to yourself. That doesn't sound that great.
No.
3, heal 3 HP, which always is nice. 4, draw a card. That sounds good.
Sure.
5, gain 5 clout.
Sure.
And then 6, choose any 2 effects, which sounds like the best one.
Yeah, absolutely. As it should.
So I'm kind of interpreting 1 and 2 as not being like the things that you're really interested in.
You're not really thinking about getting them.
Yeah.
But so Dr. Lux is basically the high risk, high reward type of character. So if you like to gamble, I highly recommend Dr. Lux.
Yeah.
Dr. Lux also has a really cool alt where she basically turns into the beast.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Very nice. Excellent. Yeah, that's super cool. So it's not like a centralized mechanic, but more like something that's character based.
Correct. Yeah. I would say, Freya, Hephaestus, Dr. Lux, and I think Rosalind has a couple as well. But also there are a fair amount of bizarre cards that also deal with dice as well.
Excellent. Oh, okay. So you could end up with dice rolling mechanics in your deck.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because I imagine some of the other characters might get a little jealous and they want to roll some dice too.
Or maybe they don't need probability. Maybe they just have some really nice flat numbers they like to roll.
There you go. There you go.
You know?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, before I start like rolling things up,
Absolutely.
let's talk about in-game condition.
Absolutely.
Actually, it's just as soon as like everybody but one person dies? Is that it?
Well, it's when the clock strikes midnight. So when the clock strikes 11, basically, that is your last round. So you know when you're on the 11th hour, you got to do whatever you're planning on doing to make sure that you can clinch a win, essentially.
Okay.
So when the clock strikes midnight, boop, it's done. You don't get one more round. That's it.
So am I to read that as there are 12 rounds or?
Well, 12 is where it ends, basically.
Right.
When it moves to that,
So
it's
there
done.
are up to 12.
Up to 12.
Okay,
Yeah. And also depending upon how many people you play with, that determines how many rounds you play. So for example, they have a handy dandy guide right here where if you have 3 players, you start at 1 o'clock. If you have 4 players, you start at 2, 5, you start at 3, and 6 players, you start at 4 o'clock.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's take a look at that because this is something.
Also recommend you move it from the bottom.
Yes. Yes. Good call.
Yeah.
So yeah, and then the list looks like this is the mechanism you use to turn the clock. That's very cool. Handy. I love games that include rules like on the components and give you guides.
Me too.
You
Me
know,
too.
That's
all
always a good thing.
the game's game producer Alex Uboldi and Matt Paquette and Co. Did such a great job of knowing exactly what rules to put in the right places so that your eye is drawn immediately to them, and there's never a question of like, oh, what's going to happen now?
Excellent. Well, yeah. So, like I was saying, this looks really great. The table presence is fantastic. I love these mats. I was worried a little bit about it being a bit of a table hog when I first saw some of the components.
It does take up a lot of space.
It does take up a lot of space, but not as much as I thought it did. And this being a lazy Susan really kind of helps with that.
Oh, absolutely.
And it's, I mean, when you look at this, it's totally worth it. Now, is this something that is kept mostly assembled in the box?
Oh yeah. So let's take a look at this box. This basically this section right here is specifically cut out for you to take your assembled tower and plop it back in.
Excellent.
Nice and safe. So you only have to put your tower together once.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent. I'm glad you guys thought of storage because that's something that that I know a lot of our readers appreciate, and it's something I personally appreciate quite a bit. I've bought my fair share of game organizers, and I love it when I don't have to do that.
Yeah, fair. That's fair.
Now, did you leave some room in here for some expansion stuff? I know a lot of deck builders tend to do that.
It depends upon how well this game does.
Excellent.
But I will just say that they live in a kingdom called 12-fold, and there are 6 princesses here.
So we're only getting half the story.
Maybe.
Okay. All right. Excellent. Well, fantastic. And this is the first time this game has been available for purchase, right? At Gen Con?
Yeah.
All right. And you're selling it down at a booth.
At the Darrington Press booth, booth 2835.
Excellent.
Yeah, we sold out in 15 minutes today, and we sold out in 49 minutes yesterday. So if you want some of these
probably
advanced
like
copies,
5 minutes tomorrow because it's Saturday.
I don't know. But there's really, really amazing foil ultimate cards, which are featured right here that are available if you purchase it here today at Gen Con. So highly recommend
Take
it.
a look at that real quick. It's shiny, nice and shiny. Yeah, the artwork looks amazing.
Yeah, it's stupendous.
And I'm sure you can now purchase this on the Darrington Press website. Would that be a safe bet?
Right now, it will
after
be
Gen Con.
it will be purchasable on our website and at Darrington Press Guild stores on August 22nd.
Okay, excellent.
Yeah.
Any thoughts about local game stores? Are we going to be able to see this on the shelves in local game stores?
Absolutely. If your friendly local game store is not part of the Darrington Press Guild, I highly recommend you talk to them about joining it. There's a lot of great benefits for being a member of the Darrington Press Guild. And if your friendly local game store already is, guess what? You should probably have some copies that are coming your way.
Excellent. And clearly you want to get on that guild because they have a lot more stuff coming out soon. So.
Yep.
Well, fantastic. Thank you so much for showing this to us.
Thank you so much. Yeah.
And definitely stay tuned to Gaming Trend for more coverage of Queen by Midnight and more from Darrington Press. And we'll hopefully get a review up at some point in the near future.
Sounds good. I'm looking forward to it.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.